All right, so we're going to be making the stool. I'm actually going to show you what we got to in my other class. There it is. This is probably about where we're going to get to here today. All we have right now are the two legs with all the geometry in them so that they can interlock together on the cross member on the inside. Now, before we ever get started on a sketch like this, it's kind of important to think through your design process. Where are you going to place things? Where do you want them to be located in reference to the origin? So we know we're going to start with a sketch, but should I sketch here or here or here? Now, when I think about this stool, there are two vertical legs. So I'm probably going to want to sketch in one of those vertical planes for the legs. And the seat is horizontal. So I'll probably sketch in that horizontal plane. So if I'm going to be sketching the seat in this plane, when I sketch this leg here, which is actually where I'm going to start, well, the seat's going to sit here and I'll extrude it up. So when I sketch in this plane, I want my legs to be below this red line because that red line is where the seat itself is going to be sketched. So most of my legs will be down here. The seat will be above the red line. So my tabs should be the only thing that stick above that red line. You see how I thought it through before I just started drawing stuff and putting it anywhere? That's super important, okay? Now, the other thing I want to think about, a really good design practice in Fusion is if you can draw something once, draw it only once. If you can type a dimension in once, type it in once. If you have to label the thickness of the legs 3 inches here and 3 inches here and 3 inches here, and they're all always supposed to match, you probably should have a parameter for that, right? So that if you ever need to change that 3 inches, you just go into your parameter sheet, change it once, and it changes everywhere. So let's think about the design of our stool. There's a lot of symmetry in it. Each leg, or I should call them sets of legs, I guess, right? Like each A-frame is an exact copy of itself, except for the little notch in it. So that means I can design one leg and the other will just, I don't need to draw it again. I can use a single sketch for both legs. So that's a good way to think. We're going to start with that. My single sketch here on this plane right now is going to be for one of the legs. But there's also symmetry within the leg itself. The left side of the leg is a mirror image of the right side. And there's really powerful tools for mirroring. And if I know I'm going to be drawing my seat up here on this red line, I probably going to put that circular seat right centered at the origin. So that means that the left side of my leg will be all to the left of this green line. So my sketch can live all in this bottom left quadrant. And then all I have to do is mirror across the green line to get the other half of my leg. So I really am drawing 1/4 of the stool to create almost the whole thing. Does that seem like it makes sense? So those are the types of things you need to think through before you even start putting lines on the page. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, there's 100 ways to do this. And I'm just going to present one, the one that I kind of thought through when I started doing this. Is it the only way? No. Is it the right way? No, it's just a way. Okay. But I'm going to think about putting a box on my screen. I'm going to put a rectangle down. Now this rectangle, I know it's going to start right here and it's going to go down and it's going to be the height of my stool. Like that's going to be the height of it. And then the width of it is going to be the widest part of my stool. Okay. Basically, I'm just kind of putting a bounding box around my stool. And for now, I'm going to type in 24 inches for the height. And the width, I'm just going to give it a number. I'm going to say 8 inches. And I'm going to hit enter. Let's zoom out and let's see that. Hit home and then view the right side. All right, there's the whole thing. And my whole sketch is going to live inside this box, except for I did tell you we're going to have tabs that stick up above this red line. Now, I do not love that I just put this 24 here on the edge or this 8 on the top. I probably want those to be parameters so that I can just modify them if I'm making prototypes or iterations of the stool, I can change it in one single location. So let's go into our parameter sheet. Let's start adding some parameters. And I'm not going to just say height. I'm going to say stool height, because the word height, as we start getting more and more complex, means there's like so many parts that have heights. There's a tab height, right? There's leg height, there's stool height. So I'm going to be really specific, and I'm going to call this stool height. And I'm going to really ask you guys always to put something in front of height, width, length, all that. You're going to be descriptive. And then I'm going to say that's 24 inches. Okay. And then I guess, what is that 8 inches? It's the bottom. Yeah, go ahead. You got a name? There is the angle. So that'll be a separate parameter. I guess I could type it in right now. So you're just giving me another parameter, right? The bottom width, I'm going to say, actually, you kind of said it. It's the bottom width. So actually, I'm going to call it stool bottom width. I think that's a better way. Not necessarily the angle, because I could have it this wide and I could have the edge be at any angle still. So it's not an angle thing, but I see where you're going with that. Exactly, exactly. Yep, Jordan. Yep, we can do all of those things. So we can set it as an angle, or we can set it. There's a whole bunch of ways we can do this stuff. Like I said, but for now, let's just say this is 8. All I'm doing is defining this rectangle, and then I'm going to change those. Instead of saying 10 and 8, I'm going to just change these so that they're those parameters. So this is stool bottom width, and this is stool height. And I'm going to say okay. And now I can go always change this size straight from that sheet. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is the outer edge of one of the legs. And since this bottom line is exactly how wide the stool is, I know the leg is going to sit here at this bottom corner. And I know it's going to go up to this top, but I need to kind of constrain where this line touches this top edge. Now, there's 2 ways to constrain it, or there's more than 2, but one way is to actually set the angle. And you can see there's a little dialog box to type in there. So I think that's what I'm going to do, but you could also tell it how many inches you want it to be in from the edge. Now, to do that, you'd have to add another construction line, right? I'd have to go up here and put a line from this top corner to the right, maybe say 2 inches in from the edge. And then, like Jordan said, this line could be coincident with that endpoint of that little short line on top. Both are valid ways. I'm just going to do this way with an angle because I don't have to create another piece of geometry in my sketch. So I'm just going to hit tab, and I'm going to type in this box an angle of 85. And now, look, this line can only be at that angle because I've typed it in. And now the last thing I'm going to do to constrain it is how long it is. And I'm going to make sure it's exactly the length where it reaches this top edge. And that X, that blue X, is telling me it's going to be locked to that blue edge. And now when I click, that's black because everything in my sketch is still fully constrained. You guys all following me and making sense? Okay. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I basically want to make the other side of this leg, but how wide is the leg, right? Is it a little skinny leg that goes up, or is it wide? Like, we have to make a decision on that. And that might be something that is nice to see it in the model and see what aesthetically looks kind of better. So I'm going to make that a parameter as well. Change parameters. And I'm going to say, I'm going to call this leg width. Okay. And for now, I'm going to go with 3.5 inches. Okay. And now from here, 90 degrees out, if I'm measuring from this line, I want to be 90 degrees away. So you see the little blue 90-degree angle marker, but the length is going to be leg width. And now it's locked at leg width. And if it's 90 degrees, right, I could rotate this, but there's a place where Fusion knows, all right, you're trying to be 90, and it gives me that little blue. I click that, and now that is, whoops, hit check. You can hit enter here, you can hit escape, or you can click this little green check box. And now this is fine, but what's going on? It's still blue. Why? I thought I constrained the angle and I constrained the length. Well, I didn't constrain this endpoint in its location up or down the leg. Now, technically, I don't care where that is. It's just a construction line. So, whatever, I guess. As long as its end is on here, which it's constrained to, I'm okay with that. I'm kind of going against my own rules because I did tell you guys it should be fully constrained. So I'm like not comfortable leaving it like that. So let's do this. I'm just going to take that line. I'm going to find the midpoint of this. There it is. And now this is going to be exactly constrained to that midpoint. And now I can say leg width at a 90-degree angle and click. And now it's locked because it's locked to the midpoint. All right. And then I'm going to go back, select that, hit X, turn it into a construction line. That's not part of my geometry. It's just a guide for me. Now, I'm going to create a line from the bottom edge. Now, I don't want to accidentally snap to one of these grid marks, so I'm going to make sure there's no box around this blue X. I'm going to click on it, and now I'm going to go up here, and I don't want it to be constrained to anything up here. There's a midpoint there. I don't want it to be constrained to that. I do want it to be constrained to the top edge, but I want it to be parallel to this line that I've already set for the outside of the leg. How do I do that? I'm sliding it back and forth, but nothing's happening. This is kind of cool. This is where Fusion's really smart. If I move the mouse and I hover over this line, I'm kind of saying, hey, this line's important to me. I'm not clicking or anything. But now when I come back out, you see it snapped, and down by the number, the little text box, there's blue lines, the little 2 blue slashes. That's telling me we're parallel to that other line. Can you guys see the little blue flashes up there? And now I have this X, and I click here, and we're in place. Now, I'm not fully constrained yet because I can slide this anywhere. Where do I want to slide it? I want to slide it so it locks to this endpoint. This is what Jordan was telling us before. We're going to use the constrain tool. The coincident constraint. Coincident, we can make a point coincident with that line. And now it's fully constrained. We have the framework for the leg. Any questions about that or thoughts or making sense? Okay.
So to make it parallel, you just hover over the other line?
Yeah, you hover over the line you want to be parallel to. That's exactly right.
All right, thank you.
You got it. All right, next thing we're going to do is create that cross brace. So that cross brace should go from the leg out to the edge. And again, there's many ways to do this, but I'm going to make a line. And before I even make that line, I'm going to decide how high up from the ground do I want the cross brace to start. I can give it just a typed in length. So let's type, we'll call it 8 inches. And now that's endpoint is set there at 8 inches. You see the black dot. And now I can make a line from there that's 90 degrees to the edge that meets the edge of my stool. Click, and there it is. And then if I want my cross brace to be the same as the thickness of the leg, I can set another little line. It's hard to see them because I'm overlapping, but this other line is going to just give me an endpoint for my next line for the top part of that cross brace. So this is going to be leg width. And there it is. It's 90 degrees. I'm going to click. And now I can click on that endpoint and go across and click. And there's my cross brace. And I didn't set a parameter, but this is almost as good. It's not horrible because this 8 inches, I can always just double click on it and change it to 5, or double click on it and change it to, call it 9. And I can place that wherever I want with changing one number still. So since it's not a parameter, but since it's only in my sketch in one place, I'm kind of okay with that. If you want to make it a parameter, please do. That's fine. Everybody following me so far? All right. The last thing we have to add to our sketch is our tab that's going to slot into the stool seat. All right. So this tab is going to be a rectangle. It's going to stick up. It's going to go across, and then it's going to come back down. Now, I'm just going to draw this, and then we'll talk about it. If I click this and click here, how tall should this rectangle be? The tab that's at the top of each leg that sticks into the stool. Yeah. Seat height, but that's kind of a weird thing because what do you mean by seat height? Thomas said it. This is already a parameter. This is our material thickness. The seat height is our material thickness. So instead of creating a new parameter called seat height, we're just going to use the material thickness because all of this stool is built out of the same material. Okay? And this is really good because if we change the material, we just change that material thickness, and every one of our tabs and every one of our slots will be modified. So this is going to be material thickness, which we don't have. I'm sorry, we didn't make it yet. So for now, I'm going to call it 0.5. We're going to actually make that a parameter because we're going to use that 0.5 all over this sketch because we're going to use 1/2 inch material. But as I told you guys, a 1/2 inch sheet of plywood might not be exactly 1/2 inch. Like this is 0.48, 42 hundredths of an inch. So now how wide do we want it to be? Now we can set that. This is a 3.5 inch leg. Let's set it to be, I don't know, let's call it 2.5. And now I'm going to just hit enter and we're going to look at this. Now, a couple things you might notice. First off, this tab is not centered. The left side is longer than the right side. Is that going to mess up my functionality? No, it's not, but it's not really the best. So we really want, and these are not fully constrained, the blue sides, because of that, right? I can click on any of them and I can slide this. And actually I could slide it outside of the leg. And even worse, what happens if I change a parameter? What if I change leg thickness parameter? Not leg thickness, but leg width. What if I change this to be 2 inches? Uh-oh, my tab is sticking out past the leg. We don't want that. We never want that to happen. So we could create a parameter that we call, I'm going to call this tab length. And I could say, all right, what did I make this before? I could have made it 2.5 inches. Now I could do that. And then every time I change the thickness of the leg or the width of the leg, I could come in and change this tab length. But that's 2 changes that I have to make. Probably don't want to do that. I probably want the length of the tab to be some fraction of the leg width, right? So instead of typing a number in, I'm going to say, let's call it 2/3. So I just 2/3 times leg width. And now that's always going to be exactly 2/3 that leg width. And so if I go into my sketch and I change this 2.5, if I find it in my list here, okay. And now I can change this to tab length and hit enter. There it is. Now this is exactly 2/3 of that width. So we're getting better. We're getting close. Now there's a couple other things we need to do. First off, we already said we should have a material thickness. So let's add that in because That's going to mess us up later if we don't. Material thickness. So this is going to be how thick the material is that we're cutting this stool out of. In this case, I'm still going to just keep everything at 0.5. And now this 0.5 will change to material thickness. Good. Now that's going to be always exactly whatever I set material thickness to be. Now I need to lock this in the left-right direction so that it's exactly centered on the top of the leg. Doesn't have to be exactly centered, but I want it to be. So what do I want to do? I want to create a length over here, a line that has the exact length that it needs to be. So we're going to have to think of an equation. We have, yes, the leg width. Yeah. Oh, so yes, and I didn't even realize I did this, but I overcomplicated things actually. Notice, can you see the line that I'm drawing right now? That's the line that's leg width. The top edge is 0.008 longer. Oh man, I wish I didn't do that. Now we have to think of a better way to do it. If we're okay with it not being perfectly centered, then we can just say it doesn't matter. We're fine with it. I might be overcomplicating this a lot, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to draw a line. I don't have a line from leg side, left side to right side. So I'm going to draw a line there. And that's exactly always going to be this length. Right? Now, if I take my selection tool, you can see there's a point here and a point here. Now there's a midpoint on the top of that line. Right? And if I take a line, lock it to that midpoint, and then draw backwards, how far do I want to go? I want to go the length of this to be tab length divided by 2. And now that endpoint that's right there should be the left edge of my tab. And I can use selection tool, I can click this edge, and I can use the coincident constraint and lock it to this edge. And now it's perfectly centered. I don't know if that was overcomplicating it, but now I think, Chris, you kind of had the right idea. Leg width, let's subtract the length of the tab and then divide that space by 2. But now, even though this angle is slightly off from leg width, this is still exactly in the center. All good? Making sense? All right. So my sketch is complete. The only thing I'm going to have to do is cut this little slot, half slot on this cross brace. But since that's going to be a different geometry for each leg, I don't want to cut it yet because I want to make the legs, since they're exactly this, I'm going to make the legs first, then I'll put that slot into them. So how do we get the second half of all this stuff? All we have to do is go to create and mirror, and we select all of our geometry. So there's 37 things selected right now. And that includes line segments and the endpoints. Those count as part of the geometry. So these dots are part of this 37 number. And now we have to choose the line we want to mirror. So mirror line, I want to mirror on this, but I can't click it. The reason I can't click it is because I'm trying to mirror it right now. How do you mirror something around itself? Like, it doesn't really make sense. You can't mirror something around itself. So we have to go back to the objects, and we just need to click on this to deselect it. See, now it's unselected. And now when I click mirror line and I just go back to that, now I can mirror around something that's not part of that. Yes, Daniel. I can't actually. I don't know why it doesn't let us. Actually, let me try something. I'm going to deselect that. I'm going to click this to select it. Maybe if I reveal the origin, that might have been the reason why. So let's say origin. Now I can click on this blue dotted line because So the green and red, no, but this blue dotted line is actually the Z axis. Now that I've revealed my origin, I can click on the Z axis. There it is. So I feel like I lost that line anyway. There we go. All 37 got mirrored. So I have 2 ways to do it. Hit OK. And now our sketch is complete. Let's check our geometry and make sure nothing's getting broken. Let's modify some of our parameters. I'm going to bring my sketch to the side here so I can watch it change. Let's change the width of my stool, the bottom width, from 8 to 10. Cool, the whole thing gets wider. Let's change the leg width from 2 to 3.5. Cool, everything got thicker. Did the tab stay the same size? Let's see. What if we made this like leg width 1 inch, make it really skinny? Does that break something? 1 inch. Nope, the tab shrank with it. That's way too skinny. That stool will break. Let's go to 3.5 again. I'm happy. Let's make this 8. What about height? What if we make the height really small? Let's go to 15 inches. Oh, looks good. Oh, this is getting a little weird. What happens if I go to like 10? Oh, what happened? I just broke my sketch. The cross brace is sticking out of the top of my legs. Why is that? Well, it's because the height that I set for the bottom of the cross brace is a number. Now I can go in here and I can double click that 9 and I can change it. I could say 3. That's not really what I want. I don't want to have to, I want them to all be linked. So a better thing might be to say stool height divided by 3, 1/3 from the bottom, and it will always be exactly 1/3 from the bottom. And this way, when I modify things, change parameter, let's go back to a stool height of 24. That's cool. Now it's 8 inches off the bottom. So that's 1/3 from the bottom. So it's always good to kind of go in and change some of these things and see if it's behaving the way you want it to be. I'm very happy with how this worked out and how it's all linked together and behaving. I'll probably go once I've extruded this and start playing with some of these parameters to see how the angle changes the aesthetic look of this. But I'm pretty happy. This looks very similar to the stool that we had in class, and I know that worked. So this is pretty close to what I want. I'm just going to say okay. There's some geometry that I have on the stool that's here in the room that's not here, like curved corners here. And we'll talk about that later and why we do stuff like that. But for now, I'm just going to say okay. I'm going to finish my sketch. And now finally, I'm just going to extrude the parts of this sketch that are actually my stool. I'm going to click on all that stuff. And now how far do I want to extrude it? Well, first off, remember, this is sketched on one of those planes. But when I rotate the other leg, it's probably going to be on the other plane. Now, I don't know if this is going to make sense, but I don't know if I can. I'm going to go to type this as material thickness for my extrusion. Okay. And I get this to, here we go. Okay. Now, the origin is not showing. I wanted to show you guys these axes. So basically this line, this dotted line, is where my sketch is. But if I put the other leg on one side of the ZX plane and the other side of the ZY plane, they're not exactly perfectly meeting at their center. I don't know if that's, I feel like I would need to sketch that out for you since it's not showing me those axes in this view. I need to basically extrude this in front of the plane I sketched in and behind it so that the exact center of my part has the origin right at the middle of it. Is that, so there's a nice little feature for that. In the extrude, instead of extruding in one direction, we can extrude in 2 sides. Now 2 sides means I could go 1 inch forward and 10 inches backwards. Or I can extrude it symmetrically, and I want to do it symmetrically. So I want the origin to be exactly at the center. And hopefully you can kind of see that here in this view. Let's see. Yeah, it's hard to see, but now we can see there's a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. And how far do I want to go? Well, the measure, I don't want to measure material thickness forward and material thickness back. I want it to be the whole length. The whole length should be material thickness. And now I'm good to go. And there it is. There's my part. I'm going to hide the origin. We're really close now. So now I just need the second leg. Now, unfortunately, you can't just highlight everything and do Command C, Command V. But it's almost as easy as that. You just go into this section on the left navigation panel and go to body and click with your 2 fingers or right click. And you're going to go to copy. And then on the screen, you're just going to click with 2 fingers. And you're just going to say, I think I have to I was selected on that. Now it's unselected. And I go down to paste. And I should be able to paste. And you can't tell because it's exactly in the same spot. But I can see on the list here, I have body 1 and body 2 is the thing I just pasted. And so the last thing, I can grab these and move them around if I want. Now I can see that there's 2 of them, but I don't want to do it by hand. I'm going to just go to move type. I'm going to tell it all I want to do is rotate. And how far do I want to rotate? Well, first I have to select an axis. We're going to do the same thing that we talked about with Daniel, showing the origin, clicking this Z axis, right, now that I can see my origin. And now I can tell it rotate by 90 degrees. And I hit enter, and there it is. That second one became a lot easier to create because of all the work we did in the front end. Making sense? Questions, comments? All right. So we're going to stop there. There's some things we still need to do. For example, they're kind of just actually going through each other. There's no way they're interlocking, so we have to add that in. And then we're going to have to zoom into some of these corners, these internal corners here. Like we're cutting this with a round cutting bit. There's no way a round tool can make a perfect 90-degree corner. These corners up top here, remember, we're going to be cutting in from the side. Imagine if you used a drill bit, doesn't make a 90-degree. So we'll talk about something called dog boning in the corners, and we can add some radiuses in some of these other spots, and that'll actually make it look aesthetically a little bit more interesting as well. We'll stop there.